Right, so remember this chapter starts off with a case study. And it's a picture of the Haiti Dominican Republic border, showing you the differences between environmental policy between these two countries. And the story, as you have already heard and or read, is that yes, it's true that people in Haiti, because they're poor, they tend to want to use wood as fuel, to heat their homes and cook their food. And that is true. But there are some more insidious nuances to the story, being that it's got a lot to do with the government, the corruption of the government, because the Haitian government actually sold a lot of this forest to other countries for their own they pocketed the money for their own personal gain. And they just don't have environmental regulations that are enforced like the Dominican Republic does. The DR has more forest reserved as protected forest. So there's a lot going on in these government contracts. But it is, however, still true that once you get rid of all of these trees, you've lost the trees, you've lost the roots, you've lost the producers that will soak up the rains. When it rains a whole bunch in this area, I mean, it's in the Caribbean, so it's constantly getting hurricanes and such. You don't get to soak up that nice water, and so it's going to make floods worse. It's going to destroy lands more. And as it does so, the water, when it rains a whole bunch, nothing soaking it up, that water is going to run off. It's going to run away. It's going to take along with it as much as many layers of nice, what would have been great, rich, nutrient-rich soil. And so what gets left behind when the flood goes away is non-arable land that you cannot grow crops on, that even the trees that were originally there would have a really hard time growing. So in ecosystem ecology, we're looking at the matter and the energy in ecosystems, how animals affect other animals, how animals affect producers, how producers affect the rest of the food chain, the food web, really, right? And how it is that we go in and disrupt these cycles, this matter, this energy, and how to stop that. Potentially, at least, starting to resolve ways to resolve that. Starting to come up with ways to resolve that. Excuse me. Photosynthesis is amazing. It's amazing. You take gas, carbon from the air, carbon dioxide. Well, you don't, but your producers do. And they form it along with some water, and they make glucose. They make this food with it, some of which is going to be built into bigger and bigger molecules to make up their cell parts, others of which they'll use to provide energy for their body, for respiration. And make sure you know photosynthesis and respiration. Photosynthesis is how these producers, basically how they make their body parts. They make their cells with this gas in this water. And then we consumers come along, and we are able to eat the producers, or we eat the consumers that eat the producers. And the only way we consumers get any of our cell parts, or the components that are going to make up our cell parts, are by eating other organisms. But producers, they take the gas and water and they build their body parts with it. That should amaze you. Cellular respiration, as you can see, the equation seems to go in reverse, but it's an entirely different process. Cellular respiration is how we and all the other living things, at least at least those of us that are in the presence of oxygen, we break down glucose. We break down body parts, pieces of body parts, whatever, the fat in your belly or anywhere else. And you break it down into smaller and smaller pieces, essentially glucose or something very much like it. And then we keep breaking it apart so that we can get the potential energy in those bonds of glucose and convert it into ATP energy. ATP energy is the energy that your cells can finally use to do things like grow and move, things that have nothing to do with building body parts. In effect, it's doing the opposite. It's removing matter, at least outside of you. All organisms perform cellular respiration, at least the organisms we care about in apes, right? So your producers will respire mostly at night, during the day too, but let's exaggerate and say mostly at night. And decomposers, at the final end stage of recycling matter, decomposers are your smallest organisms that not only take the smaller bits of already long ago dead matter, they break it apart and they start to put back nutrients either into the soil or out into the atmosphere. So they're the ultimate organisms that return these nutrients into abiotic parts of your ecosystem. Nutrients, especially meaning carbon, nitrogen, and any of the essential biomolecules, most important elements in biomolecules. Algae blooms, and we'll go over lots of algae bloom stuff pretty much all throughout the year. Algae blooms is another answer to a whole bunch of different problems that we have in apes. Look at the word productivity. It kind of has embedded in it the word producer, and it's sort of going to be giving you some measure of how many producers there are in an ecosystem, because subsequently that determines how many consumers there are and how many secondary consumers there are. So if you've got a lot of producers, you have the potential for having lots of different kinds of organisms. Gross primary productivity gives you the total amount of solar energy your producers captured via photosynthesis, so how much energy they soaked up and used for photosynthesis. The net primary productivity is the energy that they captured, all of the energy that was captured minus the energy respired. In other words, all right, so they photosynthesized a whole bunch. They caught all this energy and they made tons of glucose. Some of that glucose goes into making cell components, their cell wall, their seeds. It actually builds their body. But not all of it does, because they used some of that glucose via cellular respiration to break it down to make energy so that they could build these cell parts. And so the net primary productivity is really a measure of how much cell matter of your producers there actually is. And so it's going to equal that total amount that they got from the sun minus the amount of basically glucose that they broke down for energy. So minus the respiration. These are terms that you want to know. All sorts of different measures of productivity in different units, for example. So biomass, the mass, grams, kilograms, of living things. Energy is a measure of energy in an ecosystem. If you can figure out how much mass there is, the more mass there is, the more biomass there is, the more productive a region is, right? It's just that the units are in kilograms. A standing crop is related to biomass, related to the biomass that's present in a particular meters squared, so in a particular area at a particular time. So there should be a time component, like kilograms per meter squared within a year. Oops. Ecological efficiency, we'll talk about that because that's kind of important. How much energy is essentially conserved from one generation to the next, or how much is consumed from one generation to the next. And then now we can look at trophic pyramids, which we have looked at before. Represents how much biomass is present among trophic levels, or represents how much energy you've got within one trophic level, how much goes into the next trophic level, how much can go into the next trophic level, and so on and so on. And it's represents the energy that is consumed as one trophic level eats another trophic level. In general, we like to say that there's about 10% efficiency between trophic levels, meaning that one trophic level, as it eats the one below it, only gets 10% of the total energy that was in the trophic level beneath it. And the next trophic level that eats it only gets 10% of the trophic level that was in that consumer level, and so on. And so as you can see, this is at least one reason why we don't have too many trophic levels. It's kind of hard to get from 10,000 joules in your primary producer levels. If you only get 10%, primary consumers only got 1,000. Secondary consumers only got 100. Tertiary only got 10. Imagine how much smaller any other level would be if that would actually happen. And this is important because now you get to look at different parts of the world and figure out why some places are more productive than others. Productivity is always going to be the greatest where it's warm, because most organisms like warm places. There are some, organisms that are adapted to cold places or super dry places, for instance, but those are unusual. They're not the average sort of organism. So productivity is greatest where it's warm and sunny. You have to have sunshine in order for photosynthesis to happen. Where water is abundant, because all organisms need water, no matter what. Again, there's some organisms adapted to dry places, but the diversity of those organisms is rather low. AKA productivity is related to photosynthesis. So as you can see here, we're going to look at, average net primary production. The places that are warmest, sunniest, are the most productive. Surprise, surprise, tropical rainforests, super productive. Maybe you didn't know that. No, you probably knew. The coral reefs, algae beds and coral reefs, next productive. And then a lot of your wetlands. I'm going to talk about wetlands a whole bunch. Your estuaries. Let's look at your swamp marshes. Super productive places. And I'll explain why. If we look at the percentage of Earth's surface area, we've mostly got open ocean, right? And the ocean is the largest part of the Earth. And that is really the only reason why the percentage of Earth's net primary productivity. That's why the open ocean has such a large amount of productivity. Basically, if we just almost counted up all of the productivity on the open ocean, it's really high because that ocean is huge. And not all parts of the ocean are so productive. Parts that are right in the middle of the ocean where there's rare land anywhere else near it aren't productive. You've really got a lot of productivity the closer you are to the land itself, and we will get to learn a whole lot about why that is. It's because the land has nutrients in the soil.